Hello and welcome back to my small library. I have to refilm this video because I fucked up the first time, so I'm sorry if I'm a little bit quicker because I already told all of this. But let's talk about I Am Legend, the book the movie is based on, if you didn't know, because I'm guessing that a lot of people don't know that this was a book originally. I never knew that until I bought the book a few years ago. I think it's like 2 years now. And I just realized then that the movie actually is based on a book and not just, an idea that was made into a movie. And I read this book twice now, once when I bought it and once now to do this review. And I think we need to talk about it because I think this book is brilliant and it's a vampire novel like no other out there, so we need to talk about it. I think the main important thing is that you cannot, in my opinion, compare it to your average other vampire novel. The vampires in here really have little to do with like your Draculas and, Twilight. All of the like vampire examples we have out there, the Strain, those vampires for example. These are really, really different, and I think that is what makes the book so impactful and so great. So we will start with like my summary and my review spoiler free, and then the second half of the video will be a spoiler free review. I want to split it up because I do want to have a review for everybody who does want to read the book and doesn't want to get themselves spoiled. I don't think it's problematic for this book. I think it's not a problem if you know the story, but I know that there are people out there who prefer that. I myself am one of those people, so yeah. We'll start with the review without spoilers. The book is quite different than the movie. The pretty much the main story is the same. We have our main character, he's called Robert Neville, and he kind of survived the apocalypse, and the apocalypse was a vampire virus that pretty much killed all of the humans out there as far as he can see, because he seems to be the only one left. And he has built himself this fortress of his home, and he kind of survives there, and he goes pretty much between active phases and depressive phases, and from then on he studies the vampires and kind of tries to find a solution, something that will help him and something that will help humanity get back on its feet and maybe find some other humans. That's the gist of the story. But the movie version is just a really, really action-filled version, in where the book is just a really, really mellow, slow-going book. It has only 160 pages, but there's quite a bit in here, and there isn't really much action per se. I think he has like 2 altercations with the vampires, pretty much, not much more, because the focus is on the vampires. The focus is on how he is coping with living in a world where he seems to be the only human left, and living in a world where pretty much everything is against him, and living in a world where he doesn't really have hope and clinging on to the little hope he has left. And that is the main focus of the book, which I think makes this really, really interesting, because I think in a lot of different vampire themed books, either you have the sexy vampire, that is like a lovable object, which I'm partial to. I have read a few books that I like it. I like that. Then you have this like really, really crazy, like really aggressive, that have like inhuman strength vampires. And then you have like, vampires like Dracula and stuff, who are this like mythical creatures, kind of lords of their estates, and humans are just like a form of getting food and nothing else really, And then you have the vampires in here, which were all human, and they remember being human, but they are kind of like bizarre caricatures of the humans they once were, and a lot of the time they stand in front of Robert's house and scream at him and make rude gestures at him and make sexual advances to him and all of that, And I think that makes it kind of makes them feel so different, because they are out for his blood. they need to survive somehow, you know, and he seems to be the last one left. But at the same time, they taunt him, but in like this really weird, bizarre form. Not like, you know, Dracula who really interacts with these people, or like, you know, I don't really know what. Like, in the strain, the vampires really can't talk, you know, the lonely vampires. And so it's just a really, really different feeling I get. They don't feel so much like your average vampire, you know. So yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars, but I think it's like a really impressive version of a vampire story, and I think the fact that the focus is so much on him. Hi. The focus is. He really isn't helpful, is he? Like just the thing that the focus is just his emotions and what he's going through and all of that, I think is so much more impactful than the action-packed version that you have that is the movie actually. And obviously this book has a different ending. Well, it's maybe not that obvious, but the book has a different ending. It doesn't leave us as much open as the movie. And there's little of the action that you have in the movie, which I don't mind. And yeah, so it is quite the different experience, but I think it makes the movie a little bit better to have like kind of a little bit of background information that you don't get in the movie. So yeah, I really, really like the book. And now let's come to the spoiler-filled section because I think it's kind of cool to talk about, you know, what he's going through and the ending. I mainly want to talk about the ending because I think the ending is quite brilliant. And so yeah, Robert is really, really suffering. He is kind of an alcoholic. He swaps, you know, between his really depressive phases. He really goes between these depressive phases where he just can't do anything and he just drinks alcohol. He punches the walls, you know, he destroys his music records and stuff like that, like really, really low phases. And then he has really, really active phases where he goes to the library and he tries to, you know, work out how a microscope works and captures one of the vampires to, you know, get a sample of his blood and look at how the blood, like how the virus acted in the blood and stuff like that. He also then talks a bit about his family because the book kind of starts in the middle of the story. And he then talks about a little bit about his family. His daughter was the first to catch the illness. His wife was the second, and he just never caught it for some reason. Because at the beginning, the vampire illness was airborne, kind of. Like, there was like this sandstorm and this, I think it was a natural disaster actually, and that brought the virus to them. So yeah, his daughter and his wife actually died from the virus. And so that obviously depresses him even more. And then throughout the book, he gets just lonelier and lonelier and lonelier. Because actually, the beginning of the book, where he is like really in the middle of it, isn't really that far out from his wife dying actually, and his neighbors dying and stuff like that. What I think is the most interesting thing in the movie, they all just kind of rot together, the vampires, and like are in these droves. But in the book, he just can go from house to house and in the day just put stakes through them and kill them because they go to their own beds, if they had beds, you know, if they lived there, and otherwise they stay in hotel rooms and stuff. So they really act a little bit more human than you would kind of imagine, you know. And they look really human still, and their main enjoyment is just tormenting him each and every day and just screaming really, really rude shit at him and offering themselves for sex. It's a really weird book at times, you know. But yeah, he deals with that, and at times he really wants to go out and just, you know, let himself be killed. But he powers through, and then at one point he meets a woman. And the woman pretty much like runs away from him, but he's like, oh my god, a human. I really, really, really need to catch up to her, talk to her, take her in, and, you know, have a human. So he takes her in and he does a row of tests to see if she's a vampire or not, which she doesn't do really that well at, but because he's so hopeful and she has so many like excuses for why she can't do the tests, and he thinks she's just really, really afraid, that he lets it slide. And that obviously is his mistake, you know, and she comes from this tribe of vampires that are kind of like the better vampires. And he has so much hope now, now that he obviously, at some point he realizes, oh my god, I did a grave mistake. This really is a vampire and not a human. But at some point he kind of has an attachment to her, and she kind of has an attachment to him. But she obviously knows the consequences. She's there to lure him out, and she is part of this vampire clan that is pretty much the new tribe out there, and they kind of reign terror. They also kill the lesser vampires. He did realize at some point in the story that there are pretty much two types of vampires, ones who can walk in the day and ones who cannot walk in the day. And yeah, she obviously is of the kind that can walk in the day. And so she is like, you have to flee, you have to go, they will come for you and they will get you. And he's at that point, he really lost all hope, and so he's like, what for? There really isn't any sense in going because he doesn't know where to go. And so one day, the vampires come and they take him by force, but they don't kill him. They just take him because they kind of want to kill him in front of all of their tribe. All of the, I don't know what you would call a group of super vampires, but they are kind of like a mixture of human and vampire. They have really, really human emotions, and they really act like humans, once he gets to know her a little bit, and in the end she tells him a little bit about them, but they are still, really, really, but they're still vampires, but they can live from other blood than human blood, and that is why they survive and the other ones don't, because actually at some point the normal vampires start dying out because there's just no more blood to get, because obviously they killed out of humanity. And so yeah, in the end he's like in this little cell, and she talks to him about everything, and she's like, why didn't you, run? I gave you the chance. And he's just like, why? There's just no reason. And then once it's obvious, that he won't get out of that alive, he's like, it's so funny that I will be a legend. I am a legend, because once they kill me, there are no humans left. I am the last human being on Earth, or at least in America. And he's like, yeah, I am a legend. There really is nothing else left, and they all know him, so they will talk about him, the last human being. But he will be a legend, and that is where the name comes from. And I think that is so much more fitting than in the movie, where there isn't really a reason why he is the legend. Yeah, he dies in the end, but the woman survive, and they have the settlement where there are a lot of humans left, and so he wasn't really that much of an important thing. He just makes sure that, they have kind of healing thing, to heal the vampires. But in the book it's so much more impactful because there's no healing. There's nothing he can do. He will die, and the vampires will be the new humanity. And it's just, I don't know, I think that is much more impactful than anything the movie could have done. So yeah, I love the fact that how the book plays out, and I think it's a brilliant vampire story, even though it is quite different than what you read in other vampire stories. And don't get me wrong, I love my sort of the classic Dracula story, A Dowry of Blood, also brilliant Dracula story. The Strain, the books, I read the first two ones. I don't know if the books are called The Strain, but the series is called The Strain that they made out of the books. So because I read them in German, so I don't know the English name. So I really liked that one as well. So yeah, there are a lot of different versions of vampires that I like, but I think what really, really solidifies this book is the fact that the focus isn't on the vampires. That the focus is on the human, and in the end, it's all futile anyway, and I really, really love that. So yeah, I kind of wanted to share that with you, because I think if you haven't read the book yet, but you watched the movie and you really, really liked it, maybe just pick the book up. It's really, really interesting, and even if you haven't watched the movie, it is a brilliant book. So for me, I really like it. I think it's worth a read. It's a quick read, so that makes it also really, really enjoyable, in my opinion, because 160 pages are read quite quickly, so that is also nice. And yeah, I would really recommend this. I have the Sci-Fi Masterworks edition. Don't really know why it's sci-fi. I feel like it's more fantasy, but then again it's post-apocalyptic, so I don't know. I always have a problem with, vampires and zombies and stuff like that. Is it fantasy? Is it sci-fi? Is it both? I don't know. It's really different. But yeah. Um, I don't know. It's not the prettiest version, especially since the cover doesn't really make sense because they look really human still. And this one doesn't really look that much human. It's more like a skull with like fangs. But yeah, I think it's a brilliant book. I think you should read it at least once. And I like the fact that the story is so different and that human suffering is at the core of the story. And it's not done in an annoying way, it's done in a way where you're like, yeah, maybe I would act the same way, I just don't know. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this review, and yeah, I will put out more. It just takes me some time to do review videos, because they are a lot. I just talk so much, and cutting them down, it's a lot more work, to be honest. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, maybe comment. Have you read the book? If yes, did you like the book? Or if you haven't read it yet, could I convince you to read it? And did you like the movie and actually are at all interested in reading it? And yeah, maybe leave a like, that would mean a lot. Subscribe, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!